Muramasa, the Cursed Blade. The demon sword Muramasa is a sharp blade with terrifying destructive abilities. Here's a bit about swords forged by Muramasa. Muramasa was one of Japan's most famous swordsmiths, second only to Soshu Masamune. Legend has it that Muramasa swords would scream with bloodlust every night, and once drawn from their sheath, they must be bathed in blood before being returned. The owners of Muramasa swords often met unfortunate fates. They were either wounded by their own swords or forced to commit seppuku, ritual suicide. There is also a legend that when immersed in a flowing stream, the leaves floating on the water's surface would gather around Masamune's swords, while Muramasa swords would cut them in half as they drifted by. These legends have a basis in reality, based on unfortunate events that occurred to the Tokugawa family because of Muramasa swords. In 1535, Kiyoyasu, the grandfather of the first shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu, was assassinated by his own retainer, Abe Masatoyo, allegedly using a Muramasa sword. In 1545, Matsudaira Hirotada, Ieyasu's father, was also killed by Iwamatsu Hachiya, one of his retainers, who also happened to possess a Muramasa sword. Ieyasu himself was severely injured by his own Muramasa wakizashi sword. When Nobuieyasu, Ieyasu's son, was ordered to commit seppuku by Oda Nobunaga in 1579, the sword used to decapitate him was a Muramasa katana. The final event involved one of Ieyasu's generals, Oda Kawachi no Kami, whose spear was pierced through the enemy's helmet after Ishida Anko Nishi's failure in Keicho 5. Ieyasu demanded to test the sharpness of this spear, and it was cut by the spear blade. He claimed this spear was definitely made by Muramasa. Indeed, it was, and that spear was the last known Muramasa blade. Through these events, it seems that the Tokugawa family was cursed by Muramasa swords. Therefore, Tokugawa Ieyasu strictly prohibited anyone from owning them. The outcome was as intended. Some swords were probably destroyed, but most were hidden or had their signatures erased to continue their use. Other swords were carried by enemies of the Tokugawa shogunate, and there were cases of execution. Specifically, those who opposed Tokugawa's orders sought out Muramasa swords. Fukushima Masanori, a Toyotomi general, wielded a Muramasa katana and a Muramasa yari spear. And a Muramasa tachi sword was also carried by his ally, Sanada Yukimura. This was quite common in the Toyotomi forces, indicating that the story was quite clear, similar to the fate of Ieyasu's father and himself. Ieyasu enforced the ban law rigorously, although there were rumors that he still retained some swords as personal possessions. In 1634, Takanakyume Tsukushigeyoshi, a judge from Nagasaki, was ordered to commit seppuku when found in possession of 24 Muramasa swords. A few years later, when the final opposition faction to Tokugawa finally overturned the shogunate, many figures in the opposition faction, and eventually the Meiji government itself, would also wield Muramasa swords. We will touch on this story later. There is a story told about an incident at Edo Castle. In the 6th year of Bunsei, 1823, Matsudaira Geki was ordered to kill 3 men he had long held a grudge against, and the sword Geki used was a Muramasa. Geki was working with 5 others in the Nishimaru library, then suddenly he stood up, swung the sword, and severed Honda Iori's head from his neck. Toda Hikanishin intended to flee, but Geki slashed across his shoulder. Numata Sakyo was struck with a horizontal slash across the hip and a second blow to the shoulder. All 3 men were killed in 4 strikes. Others, Kami Goro and Mabe Genjuro, attempted to escape but were also slashed across the back and abdomen. Although the last 2 survived, it was enough to show the power of a Muramasa sword in the hands of a skilled swordsman. True to his reputation, Muramasa is known for several unique features in his work. His most notable feature is the frequent use of a mirror effect in the sword's patterns. Flipping the sword over, observers are amazed at how this side almost perfectly mirrors the other side of the blade. Muramasa was particularly skilled at this, as if a smith were a painter with a brush. The patterns on the sword, hamon, are influenced by forces outside the smith's guidance. Muramasa's sword patterns, hamon, are often midoriba with very low undulating lines, almost touching the edge of the sword, and in the middle is a segment shaped like gunome. The Honjo Masamune sword is one of the most important historical artifacts that disappeared at the end of World War II. Today, its whereabouts remain unknown. The Honjo Masamune sword played a significant role in Japanese history as it symbolized the Tokugawa shogunate, Shogun general, during Japan's Edo period. It was passed down among the shoguns from one generation to the next. In 1939, the sword was recognized as a national treasure of Japan. Historical documents suggest that the artifact was named Honjo Masamune to honor Honjo Shiganaga, a samurai general who participated in many battles between the powerful lords Usuji Kenshin and Takeda Shingen. These clashes were known as the Battle of Kawanikajima, taking place from 1553 to 1564. While serving the Usuji lord, Shiganaga led the siege of Juashonai Castle, defended by Daihoji Yoshioki. Although Shiganaga successfully captured the castle, he was nearly killed in an assassination attempt by Tozenji Umanasuke, a warrior of Daihoji. Somehow acquiring the Honjo Masamune, Umanasuke used it to attempt Shiganaga's assassination. However, the assassination attempt failed, and the assailant was killed. Shiganaga then claimed ownership of the Honjo Masamune sword and always carried it with him in many battles afterward. However, in times of financial difficulty, Shiganaga sold the precious sword to a grandson for 13 gold pieces, although it was worth thousands of gold pieces at the time. The Honjo Masamune sword later became the possession of several other famous figures in the 16th century before becoming the sacred weapon of the Tokugawa shogunate. Unfortunately, the devastation of World War II decimated the power of many Japanese clans, including the renowned Tokugawa clan. After Japan surrendered to the Allies in 1945, General MacArthur took charge of disarming the forces there. He oversaw the destruction of all weapons in Japan, including swords. Among the millions of swords destroyed, many were valuable artifacts, but some were family heirlooms like the Honjo Masamune. Some sources suggest that the last person to possess the Honjo Masamune sword was Tokugawa Ieyasu. In December 1945, Ieyasu surrendered the Honjo Masamune and 14 other swords to a police station in Mihiro, Japan. By January 1946, the Mihiro police returned the swords to Sergeant Coldy Bimore, 7th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Since then, the Honjo Masamune has been lost. The Honjo Masamune sword may have been melted down, but some experts believe Bimore took it home as a souvenir, as many American soldiers did. In recent years, some precious swords have been found for sale in the black market, but the identity of the Honjo Masamune remains elusive. Experts estimate that this sword is currently worth millions of dollars and is the dream of many antique collectors. Kusanagi, the sacred sword of Japan. The story of Kusanagi no Tsurugi originates from a legend, described in primary Japanese texts. According to the Kojiki, the god Susanoo found a family of Kunitsu-kami, gods of the land, in the province of Izumo. This family was in mourning and led by the earth deity Ashinazuchi. Thus, Susanoo decided to inquire about the cause of their sorrow. Before long, the deity was informed by Ashinazuchi that their family was being ravaged by the fearsome Yamato no Orochi, an 8-headed, 8-tailed serpent of Koshi. It had already consumed 7 of the family's 8 daughters. At present, the creature was coming to devour the last daughter, Kusanada-hime. Susanoo investigated the creature and, after an unsuccessful encounter, returned with a plan to defeat it. In exchange, he proposed marriage to Kusanada-hime and was accepted by the family. He temporarily transformed her into a comb to have a companion in battle. He then detailed his plan in stages. He directed that 8 barrels of sake, rice wine, be prepared. They were to be placed on individual platforms set behind a fence with 8 gates. Each platform would have a barrel of sake, positioned behind each gate. The monster took the bait and placed one of its heads at each gate. Seizing the opportunity, Susanoo attacked and slew the beast with his sword Orochi at Aramasa. He decapitated each head and then proceeded to sever the tails. On the 4th tail, he discovered a large sword within the serpent's body. For this sword, he named it Ame no Murakuma no Tsurugi. However, he did not decide to keep it for himself. Instead, he presented the sword to the goddess Amaterasu, his sister, to settle an old grievance. During the reign of the 12th emperor, Kik, Ame no Murakuma no Tsurugi was bestowed upon a great warrior. This warrior's name was Yamato Takeru. The sword was gifted to him as part of his aunt's offerings, Yamatohime no Mikoto. Yamato Takeru once found himself trapped in an open field during a hunting expedition by a cunning warrior. Arrows were shot to ignite the grass and trap Yamato Takeru within the field, hoping it would burn him to death. The warriors also killed the warrior's horse to block his escape. Desperate, Yamato Takeru used the Ame no Murakuma no Tsurugi to cut the grass and clear a path out of the blaze. However, in doing so, he discovered that the sword allowed him to control the wind. Utilizing this magic, Yamato Takeru directed the flames back towards the Lord and his men. Additionally, he used the winds manipulated by the sword to sweep the flames towards them. In victory, Yamato Takeru renamed the sword Kusanagi no Tsurugi, grass-cutting sword. Eventually, Yamato Takeru married and later died in battle against a monstrous beast, because he ignored his wife's advice to leave the sword behind. Kusanagi is said to be held at the Atsuta Shrine, but it is not available for public viewing. Furthermore, its existence cannot be confirmed. During the Edo period, some repairs and maintenance were carried out at the Atsuta Shrine. This included replacing the outer wooden casing of the sword. The Shinto priest Matsuoka Masanaro claimed that he and other priests had seen the sword. He stated, "A stone box lies within a 150 centimeters long wooden box, in between them is red clay. Inside the stone box is a hollow paulownia tree trunk, functioning as another box, lined with cloth inside. On top rests a sword, between the stone and paulownia boxes is also red clay. The sword is approximately 82 centimeters long, with a blade resembling a leaf bone. In the middle of the sword is a handle about 18 centimeters thick with a fish bone appearance. The sword is modeled in a metallic white color and is well maintained." After witnessing the sword, the head priest was excommunicated, and other priests, except Matsuoka, died from a strange illness. The account comes from the sole survivor, Matsuoka. The current status of the Kusanagi sword, or even its existence as a historical artifact, remains unconfirmed. We can attribute this to the reluctance of Shinto priests to allow viewing of the sword, or even the unreliable nature of its historical reference documents. All of these only serve to increase the speculation and curiosity of the people. The last appearance of the sword was during the ascension of Emperor Akihito. At the coronation ceremony, the sword, along with the Yasukani jewel in Magatama form and the seal of the emperor and the seal of the state were wrapped in packages. The sword Durandal is one of the famous mythical items in French legend. It is believed to be the sword of the legendary knight Roland, renowned in French mythology and Carolingian history. Durandal is said to have aided Roland in resisting the Muslim army in the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass in the 8th century. In the legend, Durandal is described as an immensely powerful sword, capable of resisting anything. According to the tale, when Roland realized he was about to be defeated, he attempted to break Durandal to prevent it from falling into the enemy's hands. However, after numerous attempts to damage the sword resulted in no harm, he abandoned that intention. The story of Durandal has become an integral part of French culture and tradition, and the sword is regarded as a symbol of courage and strength. However, like many elements in legend, determining the historical truth of Durandal remains a debated and unverifiable issue. According to ancient origins, Joyce, now housed in the Louvre Museum, is one of the most famous swords in history. It is closely associated with Charlemagne, the great king of the Franks. According to historians, the sword Joyce is a legendary weapon that helped Charlemagne the Great, 742 to 814, conquer Europe, uniting Western and Central Europe during the Middle Ages. Since the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, Europe had been divided into various factions until Charlemagne emerged. It is said that this sword shone so brightly that it dazzled enemies on the battlefield. The wielder of the sword was also immune to poisons. Over the centuries, this sword was used in the coronation ceremonies of French kings. The story begins when the sword Joyce, meaning joyful, was forged by Gallas, a renowned swordsmith, around the 8th century. The sword took 3 years to complete, bearing the characteristics of large European swords, with a wide, flat, and tapered blade. While returning from Spain, Emperor Charlemagne set up camp where the sword Joyce was crafted and acquired it. Since falling into Charlemagne's possession, Joyce quickly gained fame as the sword that conquered Europe. Joyce is considered a potent tool that aided Charlemagne in uniting Western Europe in the 9th century and shaping the history of medieval Europe. In the 11th century, the Song of Roland, an epic poem based on the Battle of Roncesvalles in 778, described Charlemagne riding into battle with the sword Joyce. Charlemagne wore armor with a smooth white cloak, a helmet adorned with golden stones, and the sword Joyce. Never was there a sword worthy of it. The color of the sword changed 30 times a day. In the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass in 778, Charlemagne is said to have lost the legendary sword Joyce. Fortunately, one of his soldiers found it and brought it back. Charlemagne rewarded a large piece of land to this soldier and said, "This place will be built, and you will be its owner. Your descendants will be named after the magnificent sword Joyce." Emperor Charlemagne is said to have plunged his invincible sword into the ground to mark the spot. This may be the origin of the town of Joyce in Ardoc, France, today. No one knows for sure what happened to the sword Joyce after Charlemagne's death in 814. But about 4 centuries later, in 1270, the sword was used in the coronation ceremony of King Philip of France at the Reims Cathedral and many kings thereafter. The sword was kept in the monastery at St. Denis until at least around 1505. This is where French kings were buried after their deaths. Joyce reappeared on December 5, 1793, during the French Revolution. It was last used by King Charles X for his coronation in 1824, before being transferred to the Louvre Museum to this day. The sword Joyce housed in the museum has had various parts added over many centuries. The pommel was added from the 10th and 11th centuries, the crossguard is from the late 12th century, and the grip was added from the 13th century. Previously, the sword's grip bore the iris flower motif, but was removed during Napoleon I's coronation ceremony in 1804. The crossguard of this sword is also notable for its two dragon-shaped figures with eyes made of green stones, added in the 12th century. The sword scabbard was also modified by being embroidered with iris flowers during Charles X's coronation ceremony. Both sides of the sword's pommel are decorated in the repousse style. The scabbard is made of gold and adorned with a diamond-studded mesh for decoration. Through the ups and downs of history, Joyce is regarded as a sword that showcases the remarkable craftsmanship of the ancients. Appearing in the coronation ceremonies of French kings for centuries, the sword has become a symbol of power and domination in French culture. It is a beautiful sword and stands as one of the most illegally copied swords in history. Ton Kim Ka Ton Peter La Mt Trong Nhng Hin Vt Lchsva Tun Jiao Quan Trong Trong Keto Jiao. No Si Cho La Ton Kim Ma Ton Peter, Mt Trong Nhng Mon Ka Chwagisu, A with tilde Mang Theo Trong Kuk Sng Va Trong Cacs Kin Ka Kin Ton. Theo Truin Thng. Ton Peter C Koi La Ngiu Tn C Chwagisu Nghlp Nen Ha Th Keto Jiao. Ton Kim Ka Ong C Koi La Bu Tng Ka SCMNH Va Quin NNG Ka Si Chua Tri, Va No A with tilde C Lin KT Vi Nu Kor Chuin Va Truin Thuit Trong LCHS Keto Jiao. Mt Trong Nhng Truin Thuit PH Bin NHTV Ton Kim Ka Ton Peter La Kor Chuin Vivik Ong SDNG Ton Kim CTB Tai Ka Mt Ngi Hu Ki Chwagisu B BTGI Trong Vn Du Jethsmain. Theo Kin Ton, Mt Ngi Hu Ka THNG PHNG A with tilde BCT Tai Ki HCGNG BTGI Chwagisu. Ton Peter A with tilde can devou SXO Tra Ne, Va MTS Truin Thuit Cho RNG Ong A with tilde SDNG Ton Kim. Ton Kim Ka Ton Peter CNG C Cho La Mang Li S Bo V Va SCMNH Cho NHNG RE SDNG Hoc S Hu No. Ko Nhng Kor Chuin V Vic Ton Kim Ne CSDNG Y Louis K AC Hoc Bo V NHNG NGI Ang GP Noi Him. The Wallace Sword. This sword is considered one of the priceless treasures, evoking memories of the Scottish hero William Wallace in history. The ancient sword, nearly 1,000 years old, is believed to have belonged to William Wallace, 1272 to 1305, a knight and leader of the Scottish Wars of Independence against England. There is considerable debate about its authenticity. However, many believe that this special sword was used by William Wallace, at least in the famous Battle of Falkirk in 1298, or possibly remained by his side until his death in 1305. William Wallace left a profound mark on the people of Scotland as he emerged as a military leader in the fight for independence, becoming an iconic figure in the nation. The Wallace sword measures 1.68 meters in length, 5.7 centimeters in width, near the hilt, and weighs 2.7 kilograms, with a blade length of up to 1.32 meters. Given its massive size and weight, historians speculate that the wielder of this sword must have used both hands and likely had a tall and strong build. Legend has it that Wallace used the dried skin of Hugh de Cressingham, Treasurer of Scotland responsible for the Exchequer after defeating him in the Battle of Stirling Bridge, to make the sword sheath, hilt, and belt. However, this remains a subject of controversy. Leading the Scottish rebellion against King Edward I of England, Wallace's reputation soared after the victory over the English forces at the renowned Battle of Stirling Bridge, 1297. Wallace was hailed as Scotland's national hero. However, in 1305, King Edward I captured Wallace and ordered his execution for treason, leaving behind stories of Scotland's struggle for independence and the legendary sword that had been wielded in many famous battles alongside him. The ups and downs of the Wallace sword. It is believed that immediately after the execution of the hero William Wallace in 1305, the commander of Dumbarton Castle, Scotland, John de Menteith, received the sword. However, for about 200 years afterward, there were no records or documents mentioning Wallace's sword. In 1505, documents show that the sword fell into the hands of King James IV of Scotland. The king spent 26 shillings, former currency unit in England, for a craftsman to make a sword bag, belt, and added some accessories for decoration. If the sheath, hilt, and belt were indeed made from the dried skin of Sir Hugh Cressingham, the English treasurer in Scotland, then their condition in 1505 was likely poor. Subsequently, information about the Wallace sword once again faded away. It wasn't until 1644 that the appearance of the Wallace sword was seen in the Wallace Tower at Dumbarton Castle, and later sent to London for repairs in 1825. From then until 1888, this legendary sword was stored in the ancient Dumbarton Castle before being transferred to the Wallace National Monument in Stirling, Scotland, after 19 years of request. The legendary sword of the hero William Wallace is displayed solemnly in a glass case at the Wallace Monument and has become a beloved treasure in Scotland. Not only famous in his homeland, this sword has also been exhibited overseas twice. The most notable occasion was in New York, USA, in 2005, precisely 700 years after the execution of the hero Wallace in London, England. The life and sword of William Wallace have become a legend in Scotland. Moreover, the sword of this hero is considered one of the most famous and mysterious